Rubric exercises, step module, and lower body exercises. So the first thing to discuss is step height. So the step up is obviously the standard exercise for this attachment, but one of the main questions we have is how high should the step be, or is there a maximum height that the step should go up to? Some say the knee should be about hip height, as is what we see with the image in the background, but is this just a knock-on effect of the false recommendation that you should only squat down to 90 degrees? Is there any reason why we can't have the step higher? So we could place the step at a lower level for those beginning, but there's no reason why we can't increase that up, getting higher so the knee is at hip height and there's 90-degree knee bend. But there also is no reason why we can't take it up to what we call a triple jumper step up, where the knee is in maximal knee flexion. Like I said, for beginners, start low, we can always increase it up. But a lot of people think the maximum height should be at this 90-degree knee angle or knee level with the hip, and that's just not so. If you want to go into a much higher, or progress up into a much higher step position for full knee flexion step ups, then that's absolutely fine. It's not going to be detrimental to the knee joint as long as you maintain a good quality of movement, i.e. keeping the foot flat, keeping the knee tracking in line with the shoelaces. Then there's no reason why you can't progress it higher. So the other discussion point is what to do with the non-working leg. So if the foot on the step is the working leg, the one that we're actually trying to exercise, the one we're trying to strengthen, then how much assistance is the other non-working leg providing? So if looking at the background image there, obviously the right foot that's on the step is the one that we're trying to work, trying to strengthen, and the left foot, the one on the floor, is our assistant leg or our non-working leg. But do you know how much assistance that leg is actually providing you with? So when a lot of people perform step up, you'll see this plantar flexion of that left foot. So they'll kind of drive off the toes, and that actually makes the exercise easier because you get that assistance. If we perform dorsiflexed, so what we do is you lift the toes off the ground, so you're just on the heel, and then you perform the same step up motion, then you'll feel the difference. This plantar flexion is much easier because you're getting a lot of driving assistance. So effectively the right leg has to do a lot less work. When we do it in dorsiflexion, it's much harder. And the difference between those two exercises, that effectively tells you how much assistance that non-working leg is providing you with. Then we have the discussion of quadricep versus hamstring emphasis. So the step up is a knee dominant movement, so it is classified as a squat pattern exercise with more single leg emphasis. However, we can emphasize either the quadriceps or the hamstrings simply by adjusting the start position and therefore the line of force. So looking at quadricep versus hamstring emphasis. So with both of these, the coaching cues are the kind of same. You want your foot flat on the ground, flat on the step rather. You want your knee tracking in line with the shoelaces. But the angle and the starting point clearly the key differences between these two. So when we start nice and close to the step, and it's almost a pure vertical trajectory, so you're coming almost straight upwards, then it's going to be much more quadricep overload. As you can see, the knee is further forward, there's a little bit more knee flexion, so it's going to be more quadricep overload. When we start further back with the knee more over the ankle, then you're going to have to extend the femur, extend the hip a lot more, and there's more horizontal movement of the body, and therefore it's going to be much more hamstring overload. With both, you're going to be working both quadriceps and hamstrings. It's just how you emphasize one or the other with the starting position a little bit more. So we saw this deep knee flexion step up earlier. This is what we refer to as a triple jumper step up. So you start with the foot flat, knee again in line with the shoelaces. We'll get into a deep knee flex position. So obviously this is like a dead start position as well. There's no preloading. Shift your weight forward, keeping your heel down, and then it's a vertical trajectory, just driving straight upwards. So this is kind of like doing a pistol squat in combination with a kind of step up movement. Full range of motion, deep knee flexion, step up. So we're going to be getting a lot of quadricep, particularly VMO activation, good glute activation as well. Now for those wanting to progress into pistol squats, we can do, as you see here, this kind of isometric pistol squat holds. So it's effectively holding a deep knee flexed position whilst on the step. So what we do is adjust the step slightly lower, foot flat on the ground, get into this deep knee flex position, and then with the assistant leg you're just going to shift it forward and then lift that foot off the ground and hold that set position. This is just getting you used to holding this bottom position in the pistol squat without the need to kind of lift the leg up as high as if you were performing it on the ground. So again, it's good for strengthening the quads. It doesn't quite require as much range of motion as it does when we perform a pistol squat on the floor there. Now the Peterson step up, this is a slight variation of the standard step up. What we actually do here is we're trying to target the VMO muscles, the vastus medialis of the quads. So you actually start on the toes, and what we're trying to do then is push the heel downwards onto the step. So we actually start with the knee quite far forward over the toes in this case. The toe is, or the foot is, and the leg is rotated out about 30 degrees. And we're focusing on pressing the heel down as you drive vertically. Again, we can dorsiflex the foot of the assistant leg to really overload that working leg. This is a very good exercise to try to strengthen the VMO just to gain more knee stability. Here we see the lateral step up. So again, we can adjust the height to whatever we want, but we're trying to add a little bit more frontal plane movement here. And so the abductors and adductors are going to have to work a little bit harder just to control and stabilize this lateral movement. Continuing on in the frontal plane, or adding more lateral force, we also have our crossover step up. So here we start with the far foot, we place that on the step and then drive up to a standing position. Now we can either just keep the foot there, come up and down, or we can step off, kind of whichever you prefer. So this is kind of like a curtsy squat step up amalgamation, if you like. So it's going to be a lot more particular hip abductor, abductor activation, but both the abductors and the adductors are going to have to work a little bit harder just to control the stress in this frontal plane. Then we have our transverse step up. So as the name suggests, this is now stressing the body in the transverse plane. We're going to add rotation to the movement. So you actually start sideways on with the kind of leg on the step rotated outwards, and then you're going to use in particular the adductors to really pull the body around and up at the same time. So you can see we're also starting quite far out, so we have that same hamstring emphasis anyway. So it's very much a hamstring and adductor emphasis movement, this one. Now we can obviously perform weighted step ups. We can do this with sandbags, as you see with the video. Could also be performed with dumbbells, vipers, barbells. Probably you can do it's a little bit too big. Sometimes depends how much space you've got. But again, the weighted step up will just allow us to add more load to any of the previous versions we've seen. You probably don't need it with transverse step ups, triple jumper step ups. They're usually hard enough on their own. But for a standard step up, yeah, it will work quite well just to gradually progress that exercise. Now looking at other exercises you can perform. So if you're trying to teach someone how to do a squat, then a bench squat using the step can work quite well. So what we would do here is you'd set it on the lower side. Someone would kind of sit on the edge, bring their feet underneath them, and then you can just kind of use the step as a little bit of a guide just to coach them how low they need to go. We can obviously gradually progress that onwards as well. And progressing on from the, or in addition to the pistol squat holds, on that kind of progression model, we can also do what we would call step downs. Effectively, they're just single leg squats while stood on a step. So the step downs, you don't actually touch the ground, but you reach the assistant leg down to touch the floor. So we can do that where we're reaching behind us, backwards, and again we can gradually increase the height of the step to increase the range of motion. Step downs in particular, very good for improving both ankle mobility, but also ankle and knee and hip stability. Now we can also reach forwards, which is going to add a little bit more ankle dorsiflexion requirements to the movement. And so you stand on the step, the assistant leg goes in front, and you're trying to reach again downwards and forwards so that assistant leg touches the ground. And the step down lateral does the same kind of thing. You're going to stand sideways on and reach laterally down towards the ground. Now you can start with the working leg quite close to the edge, in which case it makes it easier. The further away you stand, as we can kind of see with the video here, will make it harder. You're going to have to reach a little bit further over the step. So easier, stand nice and close to the edge, very little kind of lateral reach we have to perform. If you stand further out to the side, it's going to make it harder. And then just as with the step up, with the step down, we can also perform a transverse variation. So you stand, and then as we reach down towards the ground, we're going to perform a rotation movement, so opening up the hips. So again, the ankle, the knee, hips have to, on the working leg, on the step, have to control these transverse plane stresses. So very good for kind of people like jumpers that have to control those transverse plane stresses in a squat movement pattern. Other lower body exercises would include a split squat with the front foot raised. So again, this is more quad emphasis. So split squat means 1 foot forward, 1 foot backwards. The front foot in this case is raised up on the step. We keep that foot flat on the ground, knee tracking over the shoelaces. The quad emphasis means that you're going to lower the hips down towards the heel, that front foot. The knee is going to drive forward. So we're going to get into a deep knee flexed position. So again, very good for working the quads, in particular the VMO, and also the glutes. Again, we can add more load to it, barbell, sandbag, dumbbells, kettlebell, etc. But this is more of a quad emphasis style of performing this movement. Now the hamstring emphasis of performing the same exercise is going to be that we have a longer stance and you're going to focus on less forward movements. In this case, it's much more vertical. And so if you focus on that lead leg, it's very much kind of emphasizing the getting the thigh into a more flexed position at the hip, and that's what's really going to emphasize the hamstring of this particular exercise. So we're not trying to drive the knee forward, we're not trying to lower the hips down towards that heel. It's a much longer stance and it's much more vertical trajectory, just straight up and downwards. And that can be done kind of slower and more controlled, can be done with more load. As you can see with the video here, it's done a little bit quicker, with a little bit more of a kind of elastic. Now the split knee or leg drive, well this is almost like a bit of a combination between a step up and a split squat. So you actually start with the rear knee and foot on the ground. So you're starting in this dead start position. You're in a nice knee flex position, and it's very much a vertical trajectory. We're going to drive upwards. So it's not a reverse lunge. You're actually trying to start with that rear knee on the ground. You're just trying to start in the dead start position, and then from there, it's standing straight upwards. And you're going to find again there's a lot of quad, but in particular a lot of glute emphasis on that lead leg. Again, we can do it weighted as a progression, but initially just body weight is absolutely fine. You can start just performing this with both feet on the ground. If we do it on the step, then you have to set it quite low, just so it's up a number of inches off the ground, and that really does increase the. So we saw the split squat with the front foot raised. The rear foot raised split squat, as we see here, is referred to as a Bulgarian split squat. So whereas the front foot raised split squat was actually quite good for, can be quite good for mobilizing the ankle plantar flexors, so driving the foot into dorsiflexion, getting more glute and quad overload. We use the Bulgarian split squat more for rear hip flexor mobilization. So you'd raise the step up a little bit, the rear foot's placed on there, and then we form a split squat up and down, but the emphasis is trying to mobilize those rear hip flexors. Now for more of a metabolic station or a metabolic variation, we can perform what we call box drives. So it's effectively an explosive or dynamic step up where we actually drive the body off the step. So you're going to drive upwards into the air. Now we can do this as kind of forward box drives where you're kind of facing the step, or a lateral box drive where we're kind of stood side onto the step platform. But the idea is that you drive up in the air and then decelerate on the way down. So the stance leg, or the assistance leg, you want to try to have that touching the ground as little as possible. And all the work's being done with that stance leg on the step. Very good for getting glute and quad overload, but in addition you are going to get a metabolic effect, so the heart rate and breathing rate are both going to increase as well. Other exercises where we have what we call depth jump landing. So what we're going to perform here is you're going to stand on the step, and then you're going to step off and land in a controlled position. So you're going to go onto your toes and then decelerate the landing using dorsiflexion at the ankle, knee flexion and hip flexion. So we're trying to just control the landing and stick it. We want the knees tracking in the right direction, so no pronation of the knees inwards. And it's all about teaching someone how to land effectively and properly, and for the most part it should be silently as well. So we're just trying to get this correct landing nailed. This can then be progressed into performing a depth jump followed by a vertical jump. So we do our depth jump, but then straight into using that elastic energy of that depth in order to produce a higher vertical jump straight upwards. Other variations, we could add a lateral sprint into it, so we land and then immediately drive off into a sprint sideways one way or the other. We could add kind of a little bit of additional movement into this as well, where the trainer stands in front and then puts their hand left or right, and they have to react to that visual stimulus as well. And with all of these depth jumps, you want to make sure that someone has adequately progressed into that position or into this variation. They are quite advanced. There is a lot of stress as you kind of land from these jumps, so you don't want to give this to anybody. You need to make sure they are relatively strong in the squat pattern and can decelerate their own body weight safely. We can add depth jumps with a hurdle jump as well. So what we do here is you perform your depth jumps, and then it's a jump, not just upwards, but now with a little bit more horizontal movement. So we're jumping up and over a hurdle. Or we can add the variation where we are performing this lateral depth jump, so you're stepping off sideways and then into a lateral hurdle jump. So again, lateral depth jumps, we can kind of perform a lot of the same previous variations that we've done. In this case, we're doing a lateral depth jump where we step off to the side, control a little bit more frontal plane on the landing, but now we're also adding an additional lateral hurdle jump as well. So then we have jumps onto step, and as we discussed in the safety presentation, you do need to look at whether this is going to be appropriate depending on the step attachment. So if it's a very secure step attachment on your rig, there's no real kind of movement as you land, there's no reason why you can't do jumps onto step. Obviously it is quite a hard surface, so if someone does get it wrong, there is always the risk of hurting themselves a little bit more. If you do it onto more of a kind of soft ply box, then even if they do trip a little, it is much more forgiving if they do mess it up on the landing. But if people want to perform that exercise, it's not the end of the world as long as you've got enough head clearance. So we do a big 2-footed jump upwards, and then you're trying to go for a nice kind of minor or mini squat landing. The landing should be nice and quiet as well, so you don't want a lot of noise. And then we would step backwards, back into the stance position, and go again. You want to avoid doing lots of jumps backwards, particularly when the legs get fatigued. It puts a lot of stress on your Achilles tendon, and if people are kind of doing very fatiguing sets, it can cause kind of your Achilles to rupture or get Achilles injuries. So we generally tend to avoid that. All the effort is done on the way up, and then it's a small, easy step back and repeat. Variations, similar to some of the other exercises we've done, then are going to be things like lateral jumps onto the step. So you stood sideways on, and it's a jump upwards with a little bit of frontal plane movement. And again, a nice controlled landing. So we can step downwards. Mark, as you can see, is stepping, jumping off rather, but rather than doing it repeatedly, he's jumping off, controlling that landing, resetting slightly, and then repeating. You don't want to go up, down, without, otherwise effectively you're kind of doing like a depth jump back into a jump onto the step, and that's not advised. And then we have transverse jumps onto the step. So here we're stood sideways on, and we're going to jump upwards and add a rotation, and again try and land nice and quietly on the step. We can step down, or if you want to make it a little bit harder, you can jump down. Mark's kind of going in between each. But yeah, again, we're trying to land and control this additional transverse or rotational forces on that landing. Nice and quiet on the landing, nice controlled, and stick the landing with each repetition. And then the final variation we'll show you is a hop onto the step. So this is a single leg takeoff and a single leg landing. As such, you want to position the step attachment much lower down. You're not going to get anywhere near as much height. And so standing on one leg, you're going to use the other leg, drive that knee upwards, and it's effectively a jump with one foot, a one-footed landing, same foot onto the step. So again, we're having to control that landing using the ankle, knee, and hip stabilizers. But yeah, you don't want to position this particularly high. It is a tough drill to perform, so make sure that step is nice and low. And again, we would normally advise, unlike what you've seen in the video, is that you step down between each repetition rather than kind of jumping backwards. So just a couple of notes on application. Try to ensure a constant downward pressure during use, particularly when the step is a step attachment that moves. So for step ups, dorsiflex the ankle, i.e. lift the toes off the floor of the supporting or the assistant leg in order to reduce that assistance and place more emphasis on the stepping or working leg. You can progress the height of the step to accommodate for strength, i.e. you can put it higher. There's no reason why you can't go higher than hip height or 90 degrees at the knee joint. But you can progress into full range knee flexion if stability and strength allow. So start low with beginners, gradually work up to that 90-degree hip level with the knee position. But if you want to go higher and someone can stabilize and has enough strength to do it, there's no reason why you can't go higher. Depth jumps require excellent lower body stability and strength in order to decelerate safely and effectively. So you do not want to give those kind of depth jumps to beginners. It is way too hard an exercise. So on the review, presentations, make sure you watch all presentations for this module. For the guided learning practice, complete the guided learning practice for this module, details of which are on the learner management system. Practice the exercise yourself so you're happy with the techniques, and then also practice coaching the exercises to a colleague so you can look to get across the key information. You then want to also complete the guided learning submission for this module. And then the review questions, make sure you complete the review questions for this module to ensure you've met the learning outcomes.